Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And today I have a return guest, a very special man. His name is Leigh Brandon, and he is a functional medicine practitioner, Czech practitioner, manual therapist, energy worker, author, and podcast host. His extensive training and years of clinical experience has given Leigh the ability to provide a truly holistic approach to healing to help his clients overcome pain. His mission is to help as many people as possible live a healthy, productive, fulfilling, and happy life. Leigh, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, Cheryl, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me back on.
Yes, and I wanted to say that is like welcome back to the show because you have been on before. We had a fantastic conversation, and the link to that episode is in the show notes. So the listeners, once they hear this one, they can go back and listen to that and learn even more about you.
Awesome.
Okay, so I haven't spoken with you for it's been what, maybe 2 or 3 years.
Mm, yeah, could well be.
Yep. So
Could
what
easily be.
is new in your life?
Well, as we were kind of saying before we recorded, what I've done with the way that I work with clients is because I'm trained to deal with almost any kind of health condition or optimize people's performance. But I decided last year that I wanted to really focus on one specific type of people to help. And it's actually the type of people that I've probably helped the most anyway, certainly in the last 24 years. And that's helping people suffering in pain, which again, I've done it for a long time, but that's what I'm really focusing on now. And someone was asking me, like, why? Why why are you going down that route? And I hadn't really thought about it. And when I look back, so I started in this industry almost 30 years ago. So it'll be 30 years in June.
Wow.
And I remember this would have been 1998. I was working as a personal trainer in a gym and I was training this lady and she was doing the lat pull down exercise. Most people know what a lat pull down is.
Hmm.
And she pulls the bar down and she grabs her arm and she screams. She lets the weights go and they bang. And she's, oh, my shoulder, my shoulder. And first of all, I was like, oh no, what's happened? I didn't really know what happened, why it happened, or anything like that. And your first thought is, was that my fault? Did I
Right.
cause that to happen? Did I cause an injury? Technique looked good as far as I could see. Did I do anything wrong? So that filled me with a lot of anxiety, but it also made me feel inadequate
Mm.
because I didn't really know what was going on. Now, I was already the kind of person that loved to learn. I was, my head was always in a textbook back in the 90s because I started studying the human body in about 1992. Didn't start working in the industry till 96. So I was really keen on learning, but that kind of that kind of really hit me that there's so much more to learn. And I'd already studied with what was considered the gold standard in education, which was the American College of Sports Medicine at the time. And so I'd already been studying a guy called Paul Chek, but when I say studying, reading a lot of his work.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until the year 2000 that I saw a couple of people from the Czech Institute. They spoke live at a conference in the UK, and I was just blown away. I was like, "Wow!" They were like, it was they did happen to be a married couple.
Hmm.
One was English and one was a New Zealander, but they lived in San Diego, and I was just so impressed. I thought, "Wow, I need to learn what they know."
Hmm.
And so that really pushed me because that was the first year that the Czech Institute came to the UK and was saying, look, okay, we're going to start teaching what we do in the UK. And it wasn't until the next year that I actually started my studies. And that year, we did a lot of anatomy study, biomechanics, a little bit in pain science and nutrition, nervous system work, but we specifically did lumbar spine pathology in year one of the training, which is strange because I teach it now and we don't teach that till year three because it's so complex. And I half jokingly say to people, when I did my first year of training, it took me about a year to recover. It took my head exploded, because there was so much information, and it almost turned my understanding completely on its head. Like I can understand a lot of people. It's almost overwhelming because it really changes your outlook on the world almost. So I did my first year. So I ended up doing 5.5 years study at the Czech Institute. And just after my first year, I remember I was still working in a health club at the time, and this lady joined the health club, and the club manager who signed her up as a member, he said, look, because you've got a really serious lower back injury, I'm only going to let you become a member if you also sign up to work with our leading trainer, Leigh, who's trained in lower back issues. And she said, yeah, fine, that sounds great. Now, I'll never forget her name was Caroline. And she was a professional dancer. She was in her early 40s, but she hadn't danced for a few years because of her back pain. And dancing was her absolute passion. And not only was it her passion, it's how she made a living. So what she was doing, she was actually working part-time, doing temp work in offices, not something she really wanted to be doing. But because of her pain, she could only work part-time, so she wasn't earning much money either. So she was in, she was quite depressed because of her back pain. She was depressed because she didn't, she wasn't able to follow her passion. And obviously it wasn't great that she wasn't earning a decent living. And she'd been from, doctor to doctor. Luckily in the UK, we have a National Health Service and it's taxpayer funded, so she didn't have to pay out of her own pocket. But to cut a long story short, she came to me and I just applied what I'd learned in my first year of training at the Czech Institute, which is to analyze the body, find out which parts of the body are too tight, teach them how to loosen those bits, find out which bits are too loose, teach them how to tighten and strengthen those areas. It's a bit like realigning a bicycle wheel, right? And so she actually trained with me 3 times a week, 1 hour a day, 3 times a week. And I worked with her for 4 weeks. And then I couldn't get hold of her. And straight away, it took me back to that time in the gym with the lady, the lat pull down. And I thought, oh no, what's happened? Have I done some damage? Is she in hospital somewhere? Can she not make it into the gym? Anyway, I kept trying to call her, couldn't get through to her. And I thought, oh no, what's happened? And I felt, again, that anxiety came back. So I didn't want to leave it, but I couldn't just keep following her up. So I went to one of the office staff and said, look, can one of you try and get hold of Caroline? I want to see if she's okay. And they said, yeah, leave it with us and we'll get back to you. And after a while, I forgot about it. And it was a few weeks later, and one of the office staff came into the gym. I was actually with a client at the time, and they stopped me and they said, oh, can I have a quick word? I was like, oh, okay. And they said, oh, we spoke to Caroline. I was like, oh, how is she? He said, she's great. She's away on a dance tour. Right. And basically she said, look, can you pass on a message to Leigh and tell him I can't thank him enough because I can't believe I feel this good and the pain's completely gone, and that was a real moment for me. It made me realize what I was able to do. It made me realize how much I was able to help people, how I could really help turn their life around. And I was actually at a meeting this morning with other health professionals, and I was saying to them, when people suffer with pain, it's like they become a slave to the pain because there's things that they just can't do. For me, freedom is about choice, right? And if someone says to you, oh, do you want to come and do this? And you can't because you're in pain, you're a slave to the pain. right? So I see my job as taking people who are slaves to their pain. So it could be, they can't pick their child up from the floor, or it might be a grandparent can't look after their kids because they're not confident they could keep them safe because they're in pain, and it might not be able to run after them. Or it might be someone can't work, can't earn a living, or it could be they can't perform well at work, which means it's affecting their income. Or it could be someone's passion, it could be dancing, it could be a sport. Like, they might be missing out on doing something they really love to do. And having the ability to be able to help people get their life back, get their freedom back, it is really rewarding for me. And that's partly, I guess, why I decided about this time last year that I was really going to focus on pain, because I think it gives me the most satisfaction as well to see someone really suffering, really being limited in their life, and being able to help them turn that around and really, really begin to live the life of their dreams again. So that's kind of what's new for me, if that answers that question.
Well, that is definitely a lot. And as I said in the intro, you are a podcast host, and you have changed the name of your podcast. So it is now called
Beyond the Pain.
And I think the listeners would like to know that you're quite the accomplished author. You've written 6 books.
Yeah, 5 have been published yet.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's incredible. So you also have had your own experience with pain, your own pain journey, which actually the listeners, go back to if you go to the link to his previous episodes, you can hear Leigh's complete total story. But you were in incapacitating pain for a very long time.
Yeah, well, it was 2 years. It was just under 2 years.
It's a long time when it's pain.
Yeah. Looking back, it feels quite quick now, because it was 13 years ago now. But yeah, that was interesting. So in 2001 was when I did my first year of training with the Czech Institute. The main part of the syllabus was lumbar spine pathology. And then 12 years later, I wake up one morning and I go to get out of bed and I can't move. And I think, well, this is a bit strange. This doesn't feel normal. And, I've played sport all my life, and still do. So I'm used to aches and pains and the odd, minor muscle tears and things like that. But this was different. This was like, I literally couldn't sit up. And I thought, something's not right. And I could feel my back didn't feel quite right. It felt a bit stiff, really. And I thought, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to get out of bed? And my brain was ticking away. And when I was a teenager, I used to play a lot of cricket. I used to play men's cricket when I was a teenager. And the first few games of a season, because I was a bowler, so a bit like a pitcher in baseball, but it's a bit more demanding on the body because you run and then you bowl the ball. You don't throw the ball. It's a bowl with a straight arm, so you don't bend the elbow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's quite a contortion of the body. Puts a lot of load through the body. So when I used to play the first game of a season, the next day I'll be so sore. I used to roll out of bed and then kind of get up off the floor and slowly kind of, get to the bathroom and then have a shower, and then I'll warm up a bit and then I get a bit looser. And I had a flashback to that when I had this back injury in 2013. I thought, I know, I can roll out of bed. So I gently rolled out of the bed. And as I got out of the bed, I realized I had this numbness and pins and needles running down my left leg. And I thought, I know what that is. That's a nerve entrapment coming from my spine. And I could feel exactly where on the leg it was numb. So on the skin, we have what's called dermatomes. So specific parts of the nerves from each segment of the spine innervate specific areas of the skin in the body. And I could tell it was my L4 and L5 dermatomes that were numb and had pins and needles. So I thought, oh, maybe I've herniated my L4-5 or L5-S1 disc. So I thought, well, what would I tell a client to do? I'd tell them to centralize the disc. Okay, no problem. So there's a mobilization called the McKenzie press up. I did those. I managed to get up off the floor, and there's one called a side glide as well, which helps to centralize the disc. I did that. It didn't make any difference at all. And I thought, uh-oh, something's quite a bit worse than I thought. I'm quite optimistic. I kind of think, I'll do some mobilizations and get on with the rest of my day. But very quickly I realized I'm going to have to phone my clients today and just say, look, there's no way I can see you today. So basically what had happened was I'd actually herniated my L4-5 and my L5-S1 discs. And it meant I couldn't play tennis for 2 years. I couldn't lift heavy weights for about the same period of time. Fortunately, because of my training, I was able to go in the gym about 4 weeks afterwards, but obviously I was doing rehabilitative, corrective exercise, which did speed up the healing process. But what I remember, and this is what really helps me empathize with people, because I remember I thought, I want to get an MRI scan just to confirm what I think is going on, but also to make sure that it's nothing more serious, because there is a condition called a quarter equina syndrome, which does require surgery. And so I thought, right, I want to get an MRI. So I rang my general practitioner and said, I want to book an appointment, but I couldn't sit down, right? Because of the pain, I couldn't flex my spine, so I couldn't sit down. So I thought, well, I can't drive. There's no way. And at the time I had a garage that was quite small. And so to get in it, you had to almost contort yourself to get in the car. So I thought, there's no way I can get in the car because it's in the garage. And even if I could get in it, I couldn't sit down anyway, so I couldn't drive it. So then I thought, oh, I know what, I'll just get a taxi. I thought, I can't get a taxi either because I can't sit down. So I thought, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to get a bus. And I'm not a bus person, right? So I put on my Birkenstocks because I couldn't put shoes and socks on because I couldn't bend forwards. And I had what's called a dropped foot. So for the listeners, a dropped foot just means you can't pick your toes up, okay, or you can't like flex your ankle. So luckily it was in the middle of June. It was a hot day. So I would put my right leg forwards and then I have to drag my left foot because because it had no muscle strength. And I remember walking down my street in London at the time. I lived in London. It's not the safest city in the world, And I thought, wow, I feel so vulnerable now, I've done a fair amount of boxing training in my time, and I'm still very quick runner, like sprinting, even though I'm getting on a bit. I've got some white hairs now.
I wasn't going to mention that.
But I felt like an 8-year-old girl could come and beat me up. I felt so vulnerable, and I thought, wow, this must be what it must feel like to be old, And so I got a bus, and I remember standing in the handicap space. So there's a space on buses here where you can put wheelchairs. I was stood in it, which I thought was quite ironic. And to cut a long story short, I ended up, I was able to get an MRI the next day, and it showed that I had a herniated L4-5 and I wouldn't call it herniated L5-S1. I'd call it a bulging L5-S1. It wasn't as bad, but it was definitely symptomatic. So I look back at those 2 years and think, yeah, that was tough. But I look back and think it was a blessing, right? And the reason I say that is because it probably taught me more about lumbar spine pathology than any course, any textbook, any podcast, any presentation could ever teach me, because I lived it.
Yep.
And, silly little things like how do you get your socks on if you can't flex your spine?
Mm-hmm.
You have to work things out. And how do you spend time in positions where you're not in pain? So
Mm-hmm.
luckily my training helps with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, things like lying on my front with my hands under my chest.
Mm-hmm.
So I was slightly arching my back was a comfortable position.
Mm-hmm.
Laying on my left side with a lumbar roll under my
Mm-hmm.
spine was
Mm-hmm.
okay, but I couldn't lie on my right side. That was a no-no. I couldn't flex my spine. That was awful. But it has given me so much more empathy
Mm-hmm.
for people going through not just lumbar spine issues, but any kind of
Any kind of
pain
pain.
condition.
Mm-hmm. So, how long did it take for you to completely recover from that?
22 months.
Okay. So that's a key point there. We need to emphasize that healing can happen. Our bodies have an inherent ability to heal itself as long as
Mhm.
we give it the right conditions to do so and to be patient. Because it's when you're in pain and when you can't do the things that you love to do and you want to do, I mean, you just want it to be over and you'll do anything. But with
Mhm.
your story, because since you and I have spoken before and I've heard a little bit more about, you had some really funny incidences or funny things happen. And one of them, I thought you were walking to the doctor's office or you're walking somewhere and a car pulls up beside you and it was your mother.
Oh, yeah, that actually did happen. Yeah, that was on the way to the MRI scan, actually. Yeah, she saw me walking along on the street. Yeah, I didn't remember that. Yeah, wow, you got a good
Isn't that
memory.
funny? I remembered it because when you were telling the story in the previous episode that we did together, it was hilarious in the way that, your reaction and her reaction, it was just, because you're like, well, I'm going to give you a ride. And you said you can't.
Yeah. The other thing I would add to that, and this is something that, again, is really important for me to share with people, is that pain in itself is a blessing, right? And most people say, what are you talking about? Like, pain's a horrible thing. How can that possibly be a blessing? But the reason it's a blessing is because what it is, it's a warning, it's a danger warning signal. So if you are, I don't know, let's say you're walking down your driveway, just happen to have bare feet, you didn't see the broken glass,
Mhm.
and your foot just lands on this broken glass, the pain signal comes to your brain, and automatically it makes your leg lift off the glass so your foot doesn't go right through it, right? So it's warning you of danger.
Mhm.
If you were standing by a fire, your hand would feel the heat of the fire and you'd move it away, right?
Mhm.
So it protects you. It protects you from long lasting damage, right? Irreversible damage.
Mhm.
So pain really is a blessing. But what I think is really important when people are in long-term pain is to understand why.
Mhm.
What's the root cause of the pain? And I often say that the human body is like a roadmap.
Mhm.
It it can tell you important information, or the pain can give you important clues of things that possibly you're not aware of. So it might be, one instance, it might just be your biomechanics, your posture's not very good,
Mhm.
right? So again, you know, this is something I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about, and it's some people that are into pain science, and I'm into it,
Mhm.
but some people will say there's no such relationship between posture and pain, right? I know, and it's because you can look at certain studies, and the conclusions in some people's eyes is that there's no link.
Mhm.
Now, I've assessed hundreds of people, and I've done thousands of assessments over the last 24 years. And when someone has a posterior disc bulge like I had, which is very common, by the way, particularly in
Mhm.
middle-aged men, in my experience, 100% of them had what could be called a flat lumbar spine,
Ah.
right? Or hypolordotic, because
Mhm.
when your lower back is in flexion, so flexed forwards, it puts excessive stress on the front of the bones and the discs. So, and the disc is like what you'd call a jelly donut, right? So the jelly in the middle is like the nucleus, and what was made of the dough around the outside is like what we call that the annulus fibrosus. It's made up of fibers. So if it's pushing towards the front of the disc, it's pushing the nucleus backwards, and it can start to gradually deteriorate the fibers in the annulus fibrosis till eventually it bulges, and then it can aggravate the nerves. Now, I've never had someone with a disc bulge, a posterior disc bulge, that had anything other than that. So conversely, there are other types of injuries you can get in the spine. So at the back of the spine, you've got things called facets. Facet, they're the joints behind the main vertebral bodies. 100% of people that have come to me with damaged or irritated facet joints have the opposite posture, because now it's putting too much load through the posterior aspect, which is where those joints are. So they get wear and tear, they can inflame, and they can even cause stress fractures.
Wow.
So to say that there's no link between posture and pain, I would strongly disagree with that. And I could talk about other areas of the body as well. But what a lot of the studies say is, there's all these people with back pain. They all did this exercise and only 50% got better, right? Well, it's because they didn't give them the right exercise, you know? And even exercise on its own might not work. Like you could do all the exercises you want, but if you're slumped in a chair all day, that's going to beat any exercise that you do for 1 hour a day. So that's one thing it can tell you. Another thing that I see a lot as well is how your diet can actually affect pain. So when you eat inflammatory foods, so that could be, I guess the big thing everyone's talking about now is industrial seed oils like canola and things like that. And they cause a lot of inflammation in the body, but then you've got food sensitivities, you've got full-on food allergies as well. Any food that's not organic can be, inflammatory, because there are things in there that are inorganic. They're toxins to the body, right? Whether it's the NPK fertilizer, it could be glyphosate, it could be GMOs, it could be other kinds of pesticides. They will all cause inflammation in the body, and inflammation can cause pain. I was literally looking at a stool test from a client who has psoriasis and painful joints, which it's not been diagnosed, but it's probably psoriatic arthritis. And looking at his test results, and now I suspected I would find some kind of dysbiosis in his gut and some kind of leaky gut. It's exactly what we found on his stool test, right? So it can tell you that there might be something biochemical that's causing your pain. I actually had a client once who he came to see me, and his story was quite dire. He actually thought he was going to die, and the reason, and that sounds quite dramatic, but what had happened was he was getting pains in his chest, and whenever he ate, his throat would swell up. His throat would swell up, he would choke, and he wasn't able to eat. So he'd been on like a fully liquid diet, and even that was getting too much for him.
Oh, geez.
And he'd been on that for some time. He'd lost about 40 pounds in weight, and he'd spent a fortune on medical bills. In the UK, he didn't even bother with the National Health Service. He went private to try and get the best. And he went from doctor to doctor to doctor, and everyone was like, well, we're not really sure. It might be this, it might be that, it might be costochondritis, it might be this. One doctor said, what I'd like to do is cut down your breastbone, open it up and have a look inside to see if we can find something.
Oh, that sounds like a splendid idea. What could
Yeah.
possibly
And
go wrong?
yeah, he was like, whoa, no, 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 that's not going to happen. And
Oh,
so, and so, he spoke to me for the first time and he told me everything. And he said, do you think you'd be able to help? And I said, well, if your throat swells up every time you eat something, it tells me it's something you're eating. I said, has no one suggested that to you before? He went, no.
jeez. Okay, so no one suggested that, but somebody suggested slicing his sternum in half and, like spatchcocking him like a chicken.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Okay.
So with him, we ran a simple blood test. We found out they had certain foods he was sensitive to. We cut them out of his diet. And within 3 months, he was completely fine. And within 6 months, he put all his weight back on. And so much so, quite a few months after that, because I was based in central London at the time, and he lived towards the west of England, about 150 miles away. He just so happened to be in London one day, and he just thought, oh, I'll just drop in and say hi. And he was waiting at the door, and I actually went and opened the door, and I looked at him and said, can I help you?
You didn't recognize him.
Didn't recognize him. It was, once he started speaking, obviously I recognized who it was, and my jaw just dropped. I was like, wow, because he looked so good. Packed all this muscle on. It was incredible. And he kind of said, look, I think you saved my life. So I was honestly worried that I wasn't going to survive because I wasn't eating. And then years later, he referred his wife to me, and then years later, he referred his daughter to me. So yeah, he was very happy. But there's another thing that I think fewer people really kind of understand when it comes to pain, is that sometimes it's trying to tell you something not so obvious. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. I finished all my check training in 2007, and at the end of the training, they get you a client to work with for 4 days, and you're assessed working live with a client. So I was given this lady. She was actually from Hawaii. So I was in San Diego at the time. She was from Hawaii. And she was, if I remember right, she was 52, and she'd had pain for 27 years.
Oh,
The pain was in her left side of her neck, left shoulder, going down into the left arm, and in her left lower back. So when you look at it from a more of an esoteric viewpoint, particularly a kind of Ayurvedic viewpoint, the body has a number of energy centers called chakras, right? And when I look at the body, one of the things I do is look at the body in terms of the chakra system. So I'm looking at her pain, thinking, well, the lower back is kind of first and second chakra. The neck, shoulder, arm is all fifth chakra. And I also know that if there's a problem in the neck, it can counteract in the lower back. So the first question I asked this lady was, what's your relationship like with your mother? Right? And the reason that is because fifth chakra, communication, but also the body, the right side of the body is your male energy, and the left side of your body is your female energy. So it wasn't that I knew what the problem was. I was literally just digging for evidence. So I said, what's your relationship? What's your relationship like with your mother? Let's just say I pinned the tail on the donkey with the first shot, because this lady who was quite quiet and shy, all of a sudden just burst out, "Don't talk to me about my mother. We don't get on. She never loved me as a child. We haven't spoken for 20 years.
oh my God. So you
And
opened up the floodgates.
oh yeah, the can of worms flew wide open.
Wow.
And so I had 4 days with her. And yes, I did a biomechanical assessment. Yes, we talked about nutrition and lifestyle. But I spent most of the time coaching her for when she went back home to reach out to her mother
Mm-hmm.
and to really try and talk to her mother in a way that was not confrontational,
Mm-hmm.
but to say, look, this is how I felt as a child, and this is how I would have liked to have been treated, and this is how would have liked to have been felt. But I was also making it clear that she needed to listen to her mum's side of the story as well, because
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what was going on with your mum as well at that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I flew back to the UK. She went back to Hawaii. And about 6 months later, I get a letter from Hawaii. So I knew who it's from.
Mm-hmm.
And to paraphrase, she basically said, I can't thank you enough. Not only is my neck, shoulder, and back pain gone, but me and my mother have an amazing relationship now. We see each other every day and we get on like a house on fire.
Oh, oh,
So it was her body's way of saying, look, you need to deal with this, right? You
mm-hmm.
can't let this simmer. So the body's very, very intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are ways in which you can read the body and, like I say,
Mm-hmm.
read it like a map and try to understand what's your body trying to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
it's,
always tell people that pain actually is a powerful teacher.
mm,
And if you accept it like that, there was one class when I was still in PT school, I was taken with some practitioner, and she was saying, you dance with your pain. And I'm like, well, I can't wrap my head around that. But if I understand that, I learned a lot through my injury because I had the, low back sciatica and horrible back injury for 2.5 years. Um, and once I realized that it was the medical profession that was making me worse and keeping me in that cycle of pain and
mm,
and spasm and incapacitating pain. I can't even describe how bad it was. And it wasn't until I was told, to start applying for disability because I was going to need it. I'd never have the life I had before, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, you don't understand. I'm planning on going back to ballet class. And,
mm,
the woman laughed in my face and said, well, even if you could do it, which you can't, you're way too old for ballet. And like, she's telling me how to live my life and it wouldn't even be worth living.
mm.
And I was
Yeah,
36 at the time.
yeah, yeah. It's really sad that, our medical industry is run to generate maximum profit,
Yeah.
not to improve health
Not
outcomes
maximum,
for
yeah, not
people.
maximum health, but maximum
And
profit.
and I think medical doctors are victims of of that system. So
Hmm.
a good friend of mine, he's a former orthopedic surgeon, and there's a reason why he's a former. Um, and he says that medical school is like it is trauma-based mind control.
Yeah. Oh, I totally, totally. I mean, I went through two different medical, programs. Once as a respiratory therapist, that was my first career, and then I went back to school and got my master's degree in physical therapy, and I was shocked at the difference between how the instructors and the professors treated us as I was getting, the respiratory therapy degree, and that was pretty. You're seeing some pretty rough stuff, because you're working with patients, you're in a teaching hospital, and the way we were treated as students in the physical therapy program, I mean, it was mind control, it was demeaning, it was horrible.
Mm. It sounds to me quite similar to how soldiers are taught.
Right.
You're kind of broken down,
Yeah.
and then you're kind of mind controlled
Right. Oh
because
yeah.
you look at doctors, they have so much to learn, so much
Hmm.
to remember, and they're constantly being tested all the time, and they keep having to
Yeah.
pass their tests. There's no time to put your hand up and ask a question, and even if you did, the lecturer probably hasn't got time to answer you.
Hmm.
And if you kept asking questions, you'd probably be thrown off the course, and
Hmm.
then you've got loads of debt to pay, right?
Hmm.
But I do have a degree of sympathy for medical
Hmm.
doctors because when I went to see my general practitioner, I had a little talk with him before. I explained everything and said what I do for a living and things like that. So he knows who he was kind of dealing with, and it was obvious to me he had no idea what could have been going on.
Okay, so this is another part of your story that I really do love because like I said, it's been what, a few years since we spoke, but these things really stuck in my mind of him pushing pills on you. And you're like, no, you don't understand. I don't want to take these pills. And he's like, you don't understand. You have to take them. But it was just this long back and forth and back and forth. And so he did end up writing you a prescription and you did take it. And then what did you do with it?
I put it in his waste paper bin as I left.
Did you ever go back to him?
No, no,
Right.
it was purely only to get a referral for an MRI because
Oh, that's
that's
right.
how
Yeah.
we have to do it over here. We have to get a referral. I couldn't just turn up and say I want an MRI.
Hmm.
The GP, I still had to pay for it privately because otherwise I would have been on a waiting list. And then by the time it was my time for an MRI scan, I would have recovered anyway, you know.
Jeez.
But I do have some level of sympathy. The last 6 years, that level of sympathy has dropped considerably. But the fact that, they have about 7 minutes
Yeah.
per patient, what are they meant to do?
Hmm.
And most people are already conditioned to thinking, oh, I'm in pain. I need,
Take
I
the
need,
pill.
I need a painkiller. I need an
Yeah.
anti-inflammatory, right? It's into that instant gratification.
Hmm.
So to a degree, I have sympathy, but there is a larger part of me that thinks, come on, you got to realize you're not. Uh, I'll say this first. What the medical community are really good at, amazing, is acute care,
Hmm.
right? If you have a car accident, if you dislocate your shoulder playing sport, if you fall off a bike, that's the place to be. They're
Hmm.
amazing, right? If you have a
Hmm.
heart attack, they're
Hmm.
the place to be. Everything else,
Yeah.
they probably in most instances do more harm than good.
I have to tell you, on my show, I have interviewed quite a few MDs who have left lucrative practices. One
Mm.
was a um, no, not an osteopath. That wouldn't be right. Um, Bone doctor,
Um, yeah, osteopath.
orthopedic. Yeah,
Oh, right,
orthopedic surgeon. Yeah, orthopedic
right, yeah, yeah.
surgeon. One was a cardiac surgeon. All different areas of traditional Western medicine who left their practices to go out on their own and do other things that were more preventative, more naturopathic,
Yeah.
more, educate your patient instead of try and fix them when they come in broken.
I actually had a client for about 3 years, if I remember rightly. She was one of the UK's top oncology surgeons.
Ooh.
Uh, Very prestigious position in a very prestigious hospital in London. And she was so blown away by what I taught her, she resigned and became a cranial sacral therapist.
Oh my gosh. That's
And my
amazing.
friend, who was an orthopedic surgeon, is now a full-time podcaster.
Do you know the name of the show?
Yeah, it's called Doc Malik Honest Health.
Oh, okay, Doc Malik. And how do you spell Malik?
Mailk. Malik.
Malik. And Doc Malik on health?
Honest Health.
Honest health. Oh, I love that. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, he's got quite a story, and
Oh, I'll bet.
it began in 2020. So I probably don't need to say too much more.
Oh, well, yeah, that kind of says
But
it all.
let's just say he was very honest, which is
Hmm.
why he's no longer a doctor.
I see. Yeah. Okay. I wonder if I've heard him before. I might have. I'm
Maybe.
definitely going to look him up later today.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. His podcast is great.
okay. So,
But
oh, go ahead. Continue.
yeah, no. The other thing I think is really important to get across to people as well. I mentioned earlier that pain is a danger warning signal.
Hmm.
It's like your check engine light on your dashboard of your car, right? It's warning you in your car. It's warning you there's potentially something wrong in your engine.
Hmm.
So you need to stop, go to a mechanic, let them have a look at the engine, right? Well, if you go to a medical engineer, they'll either give you a piece of black tape to put over the light so you can't see the light, or they'll cut the electric to the bulb for the light so that you don't see the light,
Mhm.
right? That's what pills do. But what you really want is for someone to find out what's wrong with the engine, i.e., what's causing the pain.
Mhm.
Now, I've given a few examples already, but another thing I think that's really important to state as well is that some people can experience pain because they've damaged, let's say, they fell on their elbow, it's in pain. The elbow heals, but they're still in pain,
Mhm.
right? Which is why, again, this is why pain science often says there's no link between posture and pain, because there was one study done, and there's several studies like this, but one study I'm aware of, they did MRI scans on I think it's middle-aged people.
Mhm.
They MRI'd their lumbar spine. 76% of them had no symptoms, had bulging discs in their lumbar spine. So if you showed that to most medical doctors, they say, "Oh yeah, they've almost certainly got sciatic pain or whatever," right?
Mhm.
But they had no pain whatsoever. But 96% of those who did have pain also had bulging discs,
Wow.
right? So so tissue damage doesn't guarantee pain,
Mhm.
but no tissue damage doesn't guarantee no pain.
Mhm.
So you can have no tissue damage, but you can still have pain. You think,
Mhm.
well, how does that happen? Well, basically, the nervous system gets stuck in overdrive. The
Mhm.
warning system keeps going even though the danger's gone.
Mhm.
So an analogy I sometimes use is, if you're in bed at night in your house and there's a fire,
Mhm.
you would want the fire alarm to go off, right?
Mhm.
Right? Danger warning system.
Mhm.
So you get woken up by the alarm. You get everyone safely out of the house. You call the fire department. They come and put the fire out. The fire department leave, but the fire alarm's still going. There's no fire, but the fire alarm's still going,
Mhm.
right? So that's the analogy, what can happen with some people. And the reason it can stay on is not because there's real danger, but just that the nervous system is overly sensitive.
Mhm.
And again, analogy I use, if you imagine if those who are old enough remember the 1980s, you could drive down a street and all the car alarms go off,
Mhm.
right? Because they were too oversensitive.
Mhm.
But there were no car burglars, right?
Mhm.
It was just an oversensitive system. So what can cause a system to be overly sensitive? Any input into the nervous system. So it can be what we've already mentioned, a bad diet. It can be emotions, right? It can be free radicals in the body. Could be toxins, right? It could be non-native electromagnetic fields.
Mhm.
Anything that can make the body feel like it's under threat can
Mhm.
sensitize the nervous system. So it's often called central sensitization, and it
Mhm.
means central sensitization of the nervous system.
Mhm.
And it just prevents that pain signal from being switched off when it isn't really needed.
Mhm.
So again, there's lots of things that people can do to help desensitize the nervous system. I've had people go and do something like a sound bath, right? Things like Tibetan bowls and things like that,
Mhm.
and they come out and they're completely pain free. Now it's not like a long term fix.
Mhm.
It might last a few days. Everyone's different,
Mhm.
but just the fact that it really calms the nervous system. Meditation can be really useful. Breath work can be really
Mhm.
useful. Doing things like um, flotation tanks,
Mhm.
if that's your thing. I know some people are a bit claustrophobic. That might make some people worse. And I know things like hot tubs can be really helpful for people in pain. But water generally is quite good for
Mhm.
people in pain.
Mhm.
And most people will tell you, again, everyone's different. Some people say warm water works, cold not so good. Some people might say cold's really good as well.
Mhm.
But it's just really important to try and calm down that nervous system. And people in pain often suffer poor sleep because the pain
Mhm.
wakes them up.
Mhm.
But one of the best things for pain is good sleep.
Sleep.
So just trying to really maximize your sleep hygiene. Again, avoiding things like mobile phones. Definitely turn off Wi-Fi at night
Oh, yeah.
if you're in pain, right? Because that will definitely be affecting your sleep. I've actually just done a podcast episode myself on electromagnetic fields and pain. Eat as well as you can. Eat as good quality as you can. Try to avoid processed foods. Just really try and calm the body down as much as possible, and try to. And this might sound a bit strange. I woke up a few weeks ago with what felt like a bursitis in my shoulder, and so obviously it's winter time here. I don't play tennis in the winter, but spring's coming, and I'm getting revved up to get back on the court. And I thought, oh no, the last thing I need is a shoulder injury, because I literally couldn't lift my arm up. So I think, well, I wouldn't be able to serve. I wouldn't be able to throw the ball in the air. And I thought, is that pain? Is it real pain? Like, I can't imagine that I've done anything. I haven't banged it. I haven't done anything at the gym that could have done that. And I thought, mate, have I maybe got an overly sensitive pain signal? Maybe. And I just started talking to my shoulder. And I know this might sound a bit crazy, but I just kept saying, shoulder, you're safe. You're safe. There's nothing wrong. You're absolutely safe. Now, bursitis would take a few weeks to heal, right? 2 days later, it was completely fine.
So that's funny that you should mention that, because I have a very, very dear close friend of mine who is still in Denver, but we still we communicate every single day. Every morning we text each other back and forth, and she's been having a really bad issue with, she calls it her ham butt. And it sounds like a impingement, maybe some sciatica, beginning of sciatica, whatever. And she's really been struggling with it back and forth. And finally, all these things that she's tried. And I said, why don't you try talking to it? I said, I know this sounds crazy, but, just talk to it and tell them it's all going to be okay. And she did. She did try. And it worked actually, no, it worked on her knee, but it didn't work on her butt yet. She's still working on it. We're all works in progress.
Does she have anyone in her life that she would say is a pain in the butt?
I think we all have somebody in our lives who's a real pain in the butt. But yeah, I could say
And does she say it?
No. She's
Okay.
never said it, out loud to me
Yeah.
or in my presence. And we've known each other a very long time. So
That would be
I'll
worth
have to
looking into.
I'll have to ask her that. Hey, how's it
Yeah.
going? And yeah.
It's not something that I've seen, but I've heard many other practitioners say, if someone's got pain in the glute area, often there's someone in their life that they consider to be a pain in the butt, or if it's neck pain, they're a pain in the neck, or if they've got a bad gut feeling about someone, they've got tummy upset. Again, it's not something that I've seen personally, but I've heard a lot of other people say things like that.
Well, and it just underlines or underscores the point of you said that the body is always giving you messages and signals. And we have to take the time to just stop and listen.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's other things like, again, the lumbar spine often is to do with not feeling supported, right? Because that's supporting everything above it, right?
Right.
And your shoulders are to do with responsibility, because you shoulder responsibility. I've heard that ankles are about making decisions, because the ankles allow you to change direction, right? So it's really interesting. Like I say, you can literally read the body like a map sometimes. You need to probably understand multiple languages. I'm not saying there's only one language, there's multiple. Right. Like traditional Chinese medicine, right? It's exactly what they do. They read the body like a map, but they've got their own. And it's, again, even in traditional Chinese medicine, there's not one way.
Right.
They look at the tongue, they take your pulse. There's multiple things that they do to try and work out what's going on. You just need to find the right person that speaks the right language to help you work out what the cause of your pain is.
Okay, well, speaking of finding the right person, how can the listeners connect with you? Do you work remotely as well as in person?
Yeah, so I do most of my work remotely.
Okay.
Sometimes I would say to someone, I would have to see you. I do say
Mm-hmm.
that with some people. People do fly in to see me,
Mm-hmm.
but most of my work can be done online.
Mm-hmm.
So the best place for people to find me, probably just go to my website, which is bodycheck, BODYCHEK .co.uk. I have some free things on there as well. I've got something called a pain-free plate,
Mm-hmm.
which is a free guide and it outlines the 7 most inflammatory foods.
Oh, that's good.
And it doesn't just give you those, it gives you alternatives. So what
Right.
we and more than one. So
Mm-hmm.
a number of alternatives that you can switch those things out for. If you sign up to get the free guide, you also automatically get information. I run a 14-day short course
Mm-hmm.
to help people identify their exact food triggers, what might be causing their pain or exacerbating their pain, might not be the
Mm-hmm.
cause. That's actually my first one I'm running is actually, it might already have actually happened by the time this episode comes out, but I'll be running them several times a year. And they're
Okay.
by far my most affordable offering. And you do
Mm-hmm.
get my personal feedback. It's not all online.
Right.
And then the details of my podcast is on my website as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on most social media. I've been thrown off most social media as well.
Hey, wear that as a badge of honor.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not on Facebook anymore, but I'm on most of the others. You
Mm-hmm.
can either find under my name. So I think my X account is under my name.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the others are Beyond the Pain Pod.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a YouTube channel which is Beyond the Pain Podcast.
Okay. And all of these, I'm going to have to put the Beyond the Pain link in the notes because all of this is already in the show notes. So people will be able to find you. And this episode is actually not going, it's going to be going live in a week.
Oh, okay. My course will not have started by then, so
I could delay it a little bit. You just let me
no,
know.
no, 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 no. They need
Oh,
to. People need to sign up pretty quickly if
okay.
they want to get on it. Yeah,
Okay, great. Well, Leigh, it is always wonderful talking to you. And it's just so nice to
likewise.
reconnect and see what you're doing. I'm just so excited for you.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me. It's been
Oh,
good
you
fun.
bet. It has been good fun. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And do go to Leigh's website, check out the links where you can get a hold of him, listen to his previous episode on the FemiNinja Project. He is so much fun to talk to. And I mean, this is such a positive message of hope and healing. And we do not have to be a slave to our pain. We actually can treat it like the teacher that it is and learn how to take better care of ourselves. And that's very empowering. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.